In 2003, Khalid, a young businessman, traveled to Casablanca for an important deal. Upon arriving at the hotel, the receptionist looked uneasy when he learned that Khalid would be staying in room 404. The receptionist tried to change the room, claiming ventilation issues, but the hotel was fully booked, leaving no other option. Khalid entered the room and placed his suitcase down, but from the very first moment he felt something strange. The air was stifling, and the walls bore long scratches as if someone had desperately tried to escape. Ignoring the eerie feeling, he lay on the bed, exhausted, and soon fell asleep. In the middle of the night, he woke up to the sound of slow, heavy footsteps inside the room. He opened his eyes and looked toward the door, but saw nothing. However, the sound continued, and soon, he began hearing whispers. Low, unintelligible murmurs filling the space. Frightened, Khalid sat up and turned on the lamp, but the light flickered erratically as if struggling to stay on. Suddenly, he felt cold breath on his neck, as if someone was standing right behind him. He turned around abruptly, but no one was there. Then he looked into the mirror across from the bed, and his blood ran cold. His reflection was not normal. Behind him stood a woman with long, wet hair, a distorted face, and hollow black eyes staring at him with intense fury. Panicked, Khalid turned to check behind him, but the room was empty. However, in the mirror the woman began to move, slowly approaching him. His body froze with fear as the lamp went out completely. A sharp scream echoed through the room, and he felt something ice-cold wrap around his neck, tightening like unseen hands trying to strangle him. Terrified, he ran to the door, trying desperately to open it, but it wouldn't budge. His screams barely left his throat, as if the very air had been stolen from the room. Suddenly, the mirror began to shake violently, flashing distorted images. He saw a young woman in a white dress jumping from a high window, her body lying motionless on the ground, surrounded by blood. A loud noise shook the room, and the walls trembled as if an earthquake had struck. Then, the mirror split open like a dark portal, and from it emerged a towering shadow rushing toward him. He felt himself being pulled into the darkness. At the last moment, just before he was consumed, the door burst open and the voice of a hotel worker calling his name snapped everything back to normal. When Khalid regained consciousness, the receptionist revealed a chilling truth. Room 404 had been closed for years after a young woman committed suicide there. Since then, anyone who stayed in the room experienced horrifying nightmares, and some guests had even disappeared without a trace. Khalid left the hotel the next morning, but he could never forget what had happened. Night after night, the nightmares followed him. Each time he slept, he found himself back in room 404, trapped within its eerie walls, hearing the whispers and footsteps, seeing the same ghostly woman staring at him from the shadows. He began isolating himself, unable to distinguish between dreams and reality. In desperation, he sought out a well-known spiritual healer. After listening to Khalid's story, the healer told him something that made his blood freeze. "You have stepped into their world without realizing it. Now they don't want to let you go. You must rid yourself of anything that ties you to room 404. But Khalid had taken nothing from the room, and yet, the curse still haunted him. Strange things began happening in his apartment. Lights flickered uncontrollably, doors opened and shut on their own, and his bedroom mirror reflected distorted images. One night, as he sat in his room, shaken and restless, he looked into the mirror and saw something that made his heart stop. The woman was there, standing right behind him. But this time, she wasn't silent. Her lips moved slowly, and in a chilling whisper she said, "You belong to me now." At that moment, an invisible force grabbed him, pulling him toward the mirror. He struggled with all his strength, but he felt icy fingers tightening around him, dragging him into the darkness. The lights flickered wildly before going out completely. When they returned moments later, Khalid was lying on the floor, eyes wide with terror, lifeless. The next day, when his friends came to visit, they found his apartment in a bizarre state. The doors were wide open, furniture was overturned, and the mirror in his room was shattered. But Khalid was gone. The police searched everywhere, but there was no trace of him, as if he had vanished from existence. But the most terrifying discovery came when an investigator reviewed the security footage. In the last recorded moments, Khalid stood in front of the mirror, talking to someone unseen. Then his body began shaking violently before he disappeared. He was never found again. After that incident, room 404 at the hotel was permanently sealed. The staff refused to speak about it, and over time, those who passed by the locked room reported hearing eerie whispers from inside, a faint, familiar voice repeating the same chilling words. "You shouldn't have stayed here."